I was never much of a sitter, and yet clearly now I sit all the time. I'm speaking this morning about what I've learned as a patient confronting and carrying on after life-changing trauma. It isn't the path I've chosen, but it is the path I'm on. My insights are not only relevant for what I'll call extreme adversity, but also everyday stressful challenges for a new surgeon in the 21st century. I was nearly killed when a drowsy driver rammed into me, but I rebuilt my life, started a business, Lean On We Home Care, rekindled my interest in sports, and raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for a foundation searching for a cure for paralysis. The trauma team here, and specifically Dr. Dayal, saved my life several times, literally putting my jigsaw pieces back together again. I will show you how incredibly far the ripples of their success have traveled. It was Saturday of Thanksgiving weekend, 2011. I went out bicycling with a group of friends. It's something I did regularly. We went up to Harriman State Park and back. We had ridden 50 miles. We were almost home, when all of a sudden an out-of-control SUV comes barreling at us. The road curved. She went straight. She crossed the solid yellow line, hit my buddy Zach, and then me without braking. You have to visualize it. We're in a pace line, a peloton. I'm just inches behind Zach. My eyes are locked on his rear wheel. That's the way they needed to be. That's how we rolled. All of a sudden, he yelled, I looked up, and I had no time to swerve. All I could do was think to myself, keep your head up high so it doesn't bear the brunt of the impact that's coming. And that's the last thing I remember. They said I went flying over the SUV and hit the pavement well beyond. A helicopter soon landed in the field at a nearby prep school, and from there I was medevaced to here. The EMTs had radioed ahead. The trauma team and Dr. Dayal were on the ready, but I had massive internal and orthopedic injuries. My femur was sticking out of my thigh, and I was in danger of bleeding out. In clinical terms, I was a mess. Nobody expected I'd survive. In case you're wondering, I did. I woke weeks later from an induced coma, only to learn I was paralyzed and will never walk again. I couldn't process it. Who can? Dr. HUMC had to come back into my room several more times before it began to sink in. And even once I had come to, I was in this fuzzy post-fentanyl fog. I had these incredible realistic hallucinations that I swore were true. Did you know that there were made-to-order custom suits that I was waiting to get delivered to me? Burberry's, I think. And did you know that the hospital has its own party ambulance that was taking me out fishing? And I don't even fish. After 51 days and countless surgeries, I was discharged to Kessler Rehab in West Orange, my hometown. And this is not the homecoming I was looking forward to. In some ways, being at Kessler was more difficult than being here, because the goal was no longer to heal me, but to teach me how to live a life as a paraplegic. And that was a really bitter pill to swallow. Each night, I'd cry myself to sleep, hoping, praying I'd wake up and it was all a bad dream. But no. And then, even while I'm at Kessler, I'm coming back here for more surgeries on my right leg and femur. It was loaded with HO. One surgeon tried to chip away at it, and I started gushing blood like a waterfall. I remember one vivid and almost surreal moment. I was sitting in my hospital room. My wife Betsy was next to me. Two senior surgeons were arguing back and forth. One pro, one con, on the merits of saving a non-ambulatory leg. They were seemingly oblivious to my presence in the room. I was like a fly on the wall. And then Dr. Frank Liparachi said he could put a plate next to the femur and stabilize it until it became weight-bearing. But my leg didn't agree with the plate, and infection festered. He had to go in and debride it, and then again another time, and another time, and another time. After several years, finally it strengthened, became weight-bearing, the plate came off. But I still have an open wound on my right thigh that'll never heal due to the infection, and my right leg is now an inch shorter than my left. After 5 months in total, I came home to try and recreate my life. But I was having a really hard time with all the changes that had happened. The enormity of my loss of independence became starkly apparent because I could barely move on my own. I had too many days of feeling weak, frail, and really sorry for myself. I kept thinking about all that was lost, all that I could no longer do. The travel, the sports, the adventure, my career. This was well before work from home became common practice. There was no way I was going to get into my office in the city every morning at 6:30, much less all the travel that I used to do. When I worked at Lehman and Barclays, the pressure, the pace, the stimulation, the travel, and let's face it, the pay, it energized me. I felt unstoppable, and now I felt unstartable. And my girls were growing up. They were now teens. They were soon to be adults. Hopefully one day they'd get married, and I couldn't walk them down the aisle. What about my grandkids to be? Showing, teaching, playing, all those things. Without these life cycle events, what's the point of it all? And even though I had had all this great success as a managing director on Wall Street, Betsy and I had always harbored dreams of one day starting our own business, which now seemed impossible. And what about the cycling, and the skiing, and the kayaking, and the climbing, and the hiking, all out of reach? I spent a lot of time muttering to anybody who'd listen, why me? Why did this happen to me? And then one day, I think it was March 2013, a year to the month that I had come home, I was doing my usual despondent sitting around. That's what I do. And on this day, Betsy responded. She had had enough. She said, why not you? Bad stuff happens to people all the time. Wow. That wasn't the TLC I was looking for. But over the ensuing few months, I began processing the wisdom of what she was saying. And I realized I needed to make some dramatic change to get me out of my spiral and improve my mindset. For one thing, as you can tell, my family, and particularly Betsy, were getting tired of my whinging. And I had to figure out what I was going to do with the rest of my life. I had lost my joie de vivre, and I needed new passion to find it. And it seems to me that you in the healthcare industry have similar problems. You also need to upgrade your mindset. I mean, we know that staffing shortages have become endemic, particularly here in New Jersey. And the shortages, coupled with the pandemic, have exacerbated stress and burnout. And the mounting frustration is further fueled by the sense that health insurers are dictating policy. As for me, even though I knew I needed to change, I kept making a lot of excuses not to. Well, for one thing, self-pity became my path of least resistance, because I knew in so doing, I didn't need to take stock of my painful new reality. And I did understand that my life really was much harder now. And the thought of re-engaging with the world in a wheelchair, it terrified me. As for you, maybe you think the malaise going on is systemic, and there's not much one young surgeon can do to make a whit of difference against the omnipotent payers. Or maybe you think you've got enough and all you can handle right now, and you can't put anything else on your plate. Or maybe you think the system can't be improved on. Well, I'm here to tell you today that it absolutely can. In my intro video, I spoke of my close friend Ann, who died in an equestrian competition 10 months after Betsy called me out to get my act together. Ann lived a life of purpose. A native South African, she single-handedly marshaled international forces to create a youth village and residential school in Rwanda for the victims of that genocide. Her death, of course, reinforced that life is precious, but it also illuminated the power of a single person with purpose. And I now knew I wanted that. And it also became clear to me that Ann's family would have done anything to have her back with them, even in the chair. That was a pivotal point for me. What Betsy had been saying to me kicked in. I realized that my kids no longer needed me to help them with algebra or to show them how to ski, but they did need me to teach them something far more important: how to handle whatever life throws at you. In the pandemic, I became intrigued with bridge, which is ironic because my dad was a championship bridge player and I never had much interest in the game while he was alive. Most card games are won and lost based on the cards you've been dealt. But in bridge, like life itself, you can make the best out of any given situation and sometimes win, even if you're dealt a bad hand. That was a key part for me. Because then I realized that our dream to start our own business was not necessarily a pipe dream. And in fact, it became necessary. I've created several principles on how to carry on after adversity and challenges. I call it my P3 formula. Others who've experienced trauma and paralysis tell me these lessons have made a difference in their lives too. And it strikes me that it's relevant for you here as well. My first P is process. Process and accept your vulnerability. Professor and researcher Brene Brown speaks and writes extensively about vulnerability. She defines it as the willingness to show up and be seen where there are no guarantees. It entails embracing uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure, which requires fortitude, courage, and resilience. And while it's uncomfortable and challenging, opening up that proverbial kimono leads to greater connection, empathy, and personal growth. The doctors here and the nurses, they brought that caring, honesty, and authenticity to my care. Betsy and I felt her. She had the world cave in on her while I was in a coma. I couldn't weigh in on what she should and shouldn't do as she was making decisions to save my life. She was there every one of the 51 days in the ICU. Dr. Sanjeev Kaur called her a vital member of the trauma team. And there's no way I'd be sitting here today sharing my story, telling you what happened, without the caring, consideration, selflessness, and sometimes very necessary tough love that she demonstrated for me. We had many friends and family in the ICU telling her what she should, well, not in the ICU, in the waiting room, telling her what she should and shouldn't do on my behalf. Although they had the best of intents, it became overwhelming and she had to shut them all down. But we had doctors here who stepped into that void and led us out of that burning building. I'll name the one because he was our Sherpa we became closest to, and he did just introduce me, so I owe it to him. But he was by no means the only one. Dr. Rick Winters. Some of the others, who I had to write down, Frank Chiminello, Janet Yu, Dr. Dayal, Oscar Vasquez, Frank Liparachi, Dr. Bindu Balani, Human Azmi, Sanjeev Kaul, Stephen Kirschblum, and that's all I could remember. I'm sure there were others. My second P is purpose. Finding new purpose. Many people who've experienced trauma and paralysis talk about their purpose in life being revealed, which was predestined. Excuse me. I don't feel that way. But it has given the life I have new direction and greater weight. Either way, once we connect our challenges to something greater, it anchors us with agency and the right mindset to handle whatever comes our way. Creating Lean On We Home Care became my purpose. It addressed the frustrations Betsy and I experienced accessing the home care I needed then and now for a host of now chronic conditions. That aforementioned wound is just one of them, and it needs to be cleaned and dressed daily. There are two prevailing options when your parents and grandparents age and need home care. Use a home care agency or find someone on your own. But it isn't one size fits all, and people need choice. Unlike a home care agency that employs the caregivers, and Lean On we just connect families with a vetted and recommended caregiver from our network of caregivers. We're a matchmaker. You all purposely chose medicine. Don't lose sight of what drives you, because those ripples travel too. My third P is passion. Sports have always been a passion of mine, as you've heard. And almost from the minute I came home, people said to me, Ron, so what wheelchair sport are you going to try now? Most people said wheelchair basketball. I think because that's the only wheelchair sport they know. But I was a lousy basketball player when able-bodied, so that really wasn't going to work too well for me. I tried hand cycling at Kessler, but the emotional and physical scarring were way too raw. So that wasn't going to work either. I had trouble finding something. And then I bumped into a friend from business school at a party who said his rowing club in Rockland was starting an adaptive rowing program. And was I interested? I said, is it safe? Because of that wound again, and I haven't been swimming since my injury, and I don't swim. He said, no, there are pontoons on the side to keep it buoyant, perfectly safe. So I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. It started as a hobby, I'll say, and just something to try, and quickly became a passion. As you know, I have limited core strength, so I need a fixed seat with a back and straps to keep me locked in. I started racing, and then I applied and was accepted into the head of the Charles Regatta in Boston, the biggest rowing race in the world. 2 weeks before the Charles, I had a tune-up on the Connecticut River in Hartford. I went out to adjust my oar and properly capsized. Perfectly safe. Maybe not. So you have to visualize this. I can't swim, I'm strapped in, and the boat's on top of me. I'm grabbing a gulp of air, and I fall back down. I grab a gulp of air, fall back down, again and again, and now I'm getting tired. I'm fighting for my life once again. And while all this is happening in real time, a crazy thought and a crazy sensation comes over me. And I start to smile despite my predicament. I say, Ron, you really want to live. You really want to live. You're fighting for it. I know what you're thinking. Next day's headline: man survives head-on crash with out-of-control SUV only to drown while rowing. Well, maybe you figured out that's not how this story is. Eventually, I was able to unstrap myself right as help came and pulled me out of the freezing October water. As I was shivering, they gave me this long-sleeve t-shirt, head of the riverfront, as a memento to keep me warm. Some people said, Ron, maybe you better give up on rowing. Find something safer, like basket weaving maybe. But in the little that you now know me, you probably also know there was little chance that I was going to do that. So 2 weeks later, I'm on the Charles, beautiful fall foliage, the Boston skyline. I'm racing for all that I'm worth, and I got second place. I recently read where AMA President Jack Resnick was talking about the importance that passion and purpose has on both trauma patients and practitioners. He was talking on behalf of a new physician well-being program to help promote joy and passion and to fight against physician burnout. He talks about, well, you can see, he talks about all the efforts needed to promote physician well-being, and he talks about some of the factors that are causing burnout. He talks about excess workload, he talks about lack of control, and he talks about, most importantly, well, loss of purpose and meaning. He says that over these 2 years, 21 over 20, there's been a 20% increase of doctors talking about burnout. He said it's important for the medical establishment to promote self-care, and in so doing, to cultivate, nourish the same joy, passion, and purpose that are central to my P3 formula. Fast forward to today. Oh, wait, I'm ahead of myself. Sorry. Fast forward to today. Lean On We Stands Tall. We've helped thousands of families throughout the New York area choose their own safer and more affordable home care. And those thousands of families have written hundreds of 5-star reviews on Google, Facebook, Yelp, and elsewhere. And none of those thousands of families, nor any of those hundreds of testimonials would have been written without the hallowed work that you do that saved my life. Those are your ripples too. Last fall, I decided to take another look at hand cycling. All right, there you go. I joined an organization called Achilles. That's a great organization that helps people with disabilities get out on the road and compete again. They've been great. They got me a hand cycle to use, as you can see. They store it, and they help me get in and out of it. I've been training all year, and I expected to tell you today that last month I competed and completed the Jersey City Marathon with a time that qualifies me for Boston next April. But alas, I was canceled just a few days before the race. That's a story for another day. But alas to say, it's just another detour along the way and another marathon to conquer. And in fact, I hope to see you all in New York City in November for the New York City Marathon. 2 years ago, my oldest daughter, Stephanie, got married to her longtime boyfriend, Eric, and I was there for it. And I walked her down the aisle. Well, sort of. I swiveled with a walker. Last month, Stephanie gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, and I became a grandfather. And I was there for that too. Last week, my father-in-law celebrated his 100th birthday, and we threw a birthday party for him. And I was there for that too. Here's a picture with his great-granddaughter. If I hadn't made the commitment to get out of my rut, to follow my P3 formula, there's no way my life would look the same after a year today. I wouldn't have built Lean on We, I wouldn't have rekindled and reinitiated my interest in endurance sports, and I wouldn't have strengthened my family bond. I hope none of you experience the kind of adversity I have, but you do and will have challenges. Your lives as doctors are long hours and they're stressful. You're susceptible to burnout. You may think that the insurance companies hold all the cards, but they don't. You may think you don't have the power, but you do. What you do changes lives. You saved mine, and the ripples haven't stopped. So I'm challenging you today. Why not you? Why not be the change for yourselves, your colleagues, and your profession? I'm wrapping it up with one last, why not you be the change? Thank you.